So Dan Lanning, the head coach of Oregon, was on the Pat McAfee show starring A.J. Hawk. And there's been, some people have made some comments, most notably Kirby Smart kind of took a little bit of a jab at Dan Lanning and Oregon for the NIL opportunities they have with Phil Knight and Nike and that whole relationship. And so Dan Lanning spoke yesterday and responded.
Yeah, I think it's impressive that, guys like Kirby have been signing the number one class in the nation without, any NIL money this entire time. So impressive. No. Hey, obviously, Coach Smart took a little shot at us. I don't think it's a secret. If you want to be a top 10 team in college football, you better have great support. We have that, but it's not. It's 1 + 1 + 1, right? It's also the 34 or 300 teams that we went to this spring to visit. It's the 23 satellite camps. It's when they come to your campus. It's our staff. It's our alignment with our entire university that makes recruiting work.
So that was Dan Lanning speaking yesterday about the NIL conversation surrounding Oregon. And I don't know how much of this stuff is disclosed, but where do they rank amongst the biggest NIL pool in college football?
Here's the cool part about this is no one knows. I see so many articles and reports about Ohio State and 20 million. By the way, you know who their new athletic director is? Ross Bjork. What was Ross Bjork before he came to Ohio State? Texas A&M. Wasn't Texas A&M lauded as the number one recruiting class and the biggest NIL fund? And then what happened that year? By the way, everything went to crap. Yeah. And here's the deal with NIL. There is no transparency. People can say whatever they want. And no one knows whether or not it's true until the checks are cashed. I've had so many people talk about this. I'm like, dude, show me the proof. And here's the thing, they won't. No one's going to show you if they've spent, for example, $20 million, which Ohio State has been rumored and reportedly that's what their NIL has been for this year. It sounds great. You want to know why? Because it makes it look like everyone's invested in it. It makes it look like you fundraised a bunch. It makes you look like you put all these resources into your program, especially if you're a program that maybe hasn't beaten your rival the past 3 years. But the truth of the matter is there's no fact-checking, whether that's true or not. But it looks great. Every parent, every recruit, everyone else is going, oh, I want a piece of that. They're on the top of my list because that's what this is now. It's all negotiation with the kids and their parents and everything else for an eye for the most part. And there's no fact-checking. Meanwhile, you have kids who get to places and they're not getting what they thought they were going to get. And then what are you going to do? Are you going to out yourself and say, well, this is what I promised, I'm not getting it? Are you going to transfer at that point and go through the whole hassle of everything that comes along with that? And potentially put your hope or put your trust in someone else who could lie to you too? The entire world surrounding NIL is, I don't want to say a bunch of smoke and mirrors, but it's not what everyone's reporting it to be. I'll leave it at that. But so it doesn't matter what people's war chests are in regard to collectives, because the schools that are the top recruited schools are the ones that have the funds. Like they don't necessarily have to report about it or make these big splash about it, because you see what they're doing in the recruiting trail. It's pretty evident for the most part. But as far as what the numbers are that go along with these war chests for NIL and college football, no one knows. And if they say they know, they're lying to you.
I think Kirby Smart could be giving us some foreshadowing on Lanning in Oregon. I mean, I've gotten an opportunity to get to know the coaching staff a little bit and see how they do what they do during recruiting, and it looks as though they're going in the right direction. It looks as though they're attracting the right type of players. I mean, they've always been a competitive team anyway. They've lost in the national titles, but they've been a pretty competitive team. So to me, I think Kirby Smart was just shining a light on maybe what could be a team that's on the upswing, as you mentioned, with Dan Lanning as the head coach. It's a great coaching staff. They have a tremendous system, both offensively and defensively. And to hear Phil Knight come out and say what he said, and for that to be a reality, like, that's not smoke and mirrors. Not Phil Knight saying for Oregon he's willing to do whatever it takes because I have more money than I do time on this earth. I would be nervous if I'm Kirby Smart, because everybody's recruiting the country now, the world. It's not just limited to winning your area anymore. Recruiting has become very decentralized, and it has become national. And if you have somebody that could possibly disrupt what you have going on and possibly maybe, weaken what it is that you have as a team, then maybe it kind of came out in that moment. You're taking a shot. Like, generally speaking, you don't take shots at people that aren't a threat, especially if you're doing as well as Kirby Smart is. He took a shot because maybe that kind of, that's in his head a little bit. And so it's interesting, because I think if there's one school that you could actually look at and say, you know what, NIL and the involvement of what it could be, and hearing the major player that's throwing his hat in the ring to say, I'm putting it out there, let's go get it, it would be Oregon. So, and it'll be fun to see how that all plays out, because they are going into the Big Ten. They are going to have stiffer challenges in terms of the teams that they're going to play. But is this a foreshadowing of somebody like Kirby Smart feeling like, man, I'm going to have to see these dudes in the playoff, or something to that effect? But I think it's pretty cool to throw it out there. That creates like maybe a little rivalry that could take place, come from it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, all that being said, Phil Knight, giving his support, it's always been there. Like, to your point about the success of Oregon throughout the years, and even playing for the first college football playoff against Ohio State, and all the other years that they've had opportunities for it, it's always been there. It is interesting because we're kind of getting away from what Dan Lanning said. Because Dan Lanning's rebuttal to that is really what stands out the most to me. When you look at what Kirby Smart has done, they have been essentially 1 or 2 in your national recruiting rankings for the past few years. Go back to 2023. They were number 2 to Alabama. Go back to 2024. They were number 1. Go to 2025 as we head into that. They're number 3. And as of right now, Ohio State's number 1 with 24 commits. We'll see if all that stays and who flips, who doesn't. But the thing that stands out about that is, they've got 21 commits. So there's some room depending on how many, scholarship spots they have. And all of this could change too as we go through a world of revenue sharing and how, what limitations are put on potentially, these. Does recruiting matter quite as much in regards to it, depending on the roster size and how many recruits we get? Like, one of the things that I always look at is the average per recruit. And what stands out, as far as what Dan Lanning has done, is they have the highest average per recruit for that 2025 class. So, for example, I just said Georgia has 21 commits for that class. Oregon has 15. And they've got 2 5-stars, 12 4-stars, all that stuff. So the point is they're getting a very, quality player commit as far as how it's working. So Dan Lanning's got them going in the right direction. Anyone who's sat down with him, talked to him, you can see why he's successful. He is incredibly intelligent. He's on it. He recruits his tail off. He works his tail off. There's just something about him where you can kind of feel a connection with him that I think resonates with parents and with recruits. And on top of it, for people who have been, I assume you've been to Eugene, LaVar?
I have not gone.
Okay, so
nope.
if you do have the opportunity, if people get the opportunity, if you're in the state of Oregon, go by, because their facilities are up there towards the top in all of college football. The stadium's extremely unique. The training facility,
the parking
is
lot,
first class.
I heard everything is crazy there.
Everything is first class, and it would be probably I should say probably it will be a step down for most of those guys to go to an NFL facility from what they have there in Oregon. So it's an entirely different world you're talking about.